"Please don't take my child," she cried. Then a silent rancher changed everything. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows over the wide, dusty plains of the Narian ranch. A soft wind rustled the tall grass, carrying the faint smell of burnt soil and wildflowers. The ranch was quiet, too quiet, except for the occasional low moo of the cattle and the creak of a wooden gate swinging gently on its hinges. Mara stepped out of the small farmhouse, her hands covered in flour from baking the morning bread. Her eyes scanned the open fields, watching her young son, Eli, run after a red ball near the edge of the corral. The boy's laughter carried across the plains, pure and unafraid. Mara smiled, her heart warming at the simple joy. Life on this human colony planet was hard, but moments like this made it worth it. She wiped her hands on her apron and started walking toward the field. "Eli, don't go too far," she called. Eli waved, his small hand catching the sun. "I'm right here, Mama," but something in the air felt off. Mara paused mid-step. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying a strange metallic scent that made her stomach tighten. She looked up. In the distance, beyond the hills where the cattle grazed, she saw a shimmer, almost like a heat wave, but it moved strangely, too fast and too deliberate. Her heart began to pound. Then she saw them. Tall figures, dark and shadowed against the horizon, gliding silently toward her son. Their shapes were human-like, but too sharp, too angular, with a glow that pulsed faintly around them. They didn't run or walk, they hovered, gliding across the ground in a way that seemed impossible. "No, no, please," Mara's voice cracked as panic surged through her. She ran forward, calling Eli's name. "Eli, don't move, run to me." But it was too late. One of the beings reached down and lifted Eli effortlessly, holding him like a doll. The boy struggled, shouting, "Mama," but the figure made no sound. Its otherworldly presence felt cold, clinical. Mara's knees buckled as she fell to the ground, her hands reaching out in desperation. "Please, don't take my child," she cried. The shadowed beings paused, turning as if they had just noticed her. For a moment she thought hope flickered in the scene, but then they moved again, slowly, deliberately, carrying Eli toward the horizon, toward the dark line of the canyon where no one else dared to go. Mara scrambled to her feet. She ran after them, her feet kicking up dust, her voice raw from screaming. "Stop, I beg you, please." But the wind carried her words away and the figures glided silently over the ground. She wasn't alone, though. From the edge of the canyon, a figure watched. Jace, the rancher who never spoke more than a few words in a week, stood tall and silent. His wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow over his eyes, but his gaze was sharp, calm, and unwavering. He had seen many strange things in his life, storms that bent the grass like water, animals behaving in impossible ways, and traders from the outer colonies who carried secrets in their eyes. But this was something new. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He simply studied. The movement, the speed, the angles, it all made sense to him. Jace understood patterns, the way things moved in nature and beyond. He had spent years learning how to track cattle, read the weather, and anticipate dangers on this wild planet. And now he studied these beings as if he were watching a herd of animals. Mara's sobs caught his attention. He turned his gaze toward her and she looked at him, desperation written across her face. But Jace said nothing. Instead, he pulled a small device from his belt, a hand-sized tool of wires and glass, leftover technology from Earth that no one else in the colony could operate. He flicked a switch, and a soft hum vibrated in the air. Mara didn't know what it was, but she knew, somehow, that he was going to help. The shadowed figures paused again, glancing in the direction of Jace. They didn't seem to recognize him, but something about his calm presence made them hesitate. It was just a small hesitation, barely noticeable, but it was enough. Mara took a deep breath and ran faster, following the narrow trail that led to the canyon. The grass scratched her legs, but she didn't care. Her son's life depended on her speed, her courage, her will. Jace moved faster now, following the same path, but with a precision that Mara couldn't match. He leapt over fallen logs and loose rocks, his eyes never leaving the moving figures. He understood how to predict their steps, their turns, the rhythm of their movement. As they approached the canyon, Mara realized something else. These beings were not just taking her son. They were taking him to a cliff's edge, where the land dropped sharply into a shimmering river of molten minerals far below. The canyon glowed with a light that was not sunlight, a strange alien energy that made the rocks hum softly. Her heart froze. "No, no, don't," she shouted. Jace was already ahead, crouched behind a jagged rock formation, observing. He motioned silently for Mara to stay back, but she ignored him, running closer despite the danger. The shadowed figures reached the edge and paused. One of them extended a hand, and Eli floated slightly above the ground, as if the air itself held him. The boy's small arms flailed, and he shouted for his mother again. Mara's breath caught in her throat. She could do nothing. No weapon, no tool, nothing could match the alien's power. Then something unexpected happened. Jace touched the small device again. A pulse of light shot from it, not bright, not loud, but precise. It was enough to make the shadowed figures hesitate once more. They tilted their heads as if confused, their glowing eyes flickering with uncertainty. Mara noticed it too. She felt a spark of hope. Maybe there was a way to get her son back. "Please, Jace, do something," she cried, her voice trembling. He didn't answer, he never answered, he never had. But his eyes, calm, steady, knowing, told her that he already had a plan. The shadowed beings, unsettled by the pulse, began to shift their formation. They didn't understand humans, Mara realized. Humans weren't predictable. Humans didn't just act according to logic or strength. They acted according to heart, intuition, and determination. And that made humans dangerous. Eli's small hands reached out, fingers brushing the air as if he knew someone was trying to save him. Mara's heart leapt. He still had hope. He still believed. Jace slowly moved to the side, staying in the shadows. He observed the beings' patterns, noticing the rhythm of their pulse, the way they responded to the environment. Every step, every move was part of a puzzle that only he could see. Mara realized something crucial. This wasn't about fighting the aliens head-on. It was about understanding them, outthinking them, and using the land, the tools, and the humans' unpredictable nature to her advantage. And that was what Jace was doing. For now, all they could do was wait, watch, plan. The canyon air hummed with tension. The twin suns dipped lower, bathing the plains in orange light. The shadowed figures still held Eli, but their confidence wavered. Humans were not easy to control. Mara's hands clenched together. She whispered to herself, "Please, someone save him." Jace did not move. He simply observed, silent as the wind. But in his calm, patient way, Mara knew one thing for certain. Her son had a chance. And with Jace, that chance might just be enough. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the canyon in deep reds and purples. The ranch, quiet for now, held its breath. And somewhere in the shadows, a silent human mind was already working on a plan that could change everything. The night had fallen over Narration Ranch, and the twin moons cast a pale light across the plains. The canyon glimmered faintly with the alien energy that had held Eli captive just hours before. Mara sat on the porch of the farmhouse, hugging her knees, her eyes fixed on the distant canyon. Sleep felt impossible. Every shadow seemed to carry the faint image of her son, small and helpless, floating in the hands of the shadowed figures. Jace stood nearby, silent as always, leaning on the fence. His hat tilted low over his eyes, and the faint hum of the device he had used earlier pulsed quietly in his pocket. Mara glanced at him, her desperation mixing with confusion. Can you save him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jace didn't answer. He never did. But Mara had learned long ago that his silence was not weakness, it was observation, patience. strategy. He knelt briefly, examining the soil near the fence, feeling its texture, its moisture, its stability. Every detail mattered. Every detail could be a tool. Mara noticed that he wasn't looking at the alien craft directly. He was reading the land, reading the air, reading the pattern of the stars. I, I don't understand how you do it, she said. You're just standing there, and yet, she paused, realizing words failed to capture what he did. Jace stood, tipped his hat slightly toward her, and moved toward the barn. Inside, he began assembling a set of old human tools and scraps of metal, wires, and small batteries he had collected over the years. Mara watched with growing hope as he worked. Even in silence, he communicated purpose, every movement deliberate, every adjustment precise. By the time Mara joined him in the barn, the first plan was forming. Jace had rigged a small drone from an old maintenance unit. It was no bigger than a toolbox, with small flickering lights and tiny sensors. Mara didn't know how it worked, but she could see its potential. "This can confuse them," she asked. Jace tapped the drone lightly, then pointed toward the canyon. It hovered for a moment, responding to his hand gestures. Mara realized that it could mimic movement, create shadows, and distract the alien figures. "We don't fight them with strength," Mara said aloud, almost to herself. "We fight with thinking, with planning." Jace nodded once, his silent acknowledgement enough to reassure her. The next morning, the two of them set out quietly toward the canyon. Mara kept her distance, but she followed Jace's lead, trusting his intuition. The shadowed figures were still there, hovering near the canyon edge, scanning the plains. But now they seemed cautious. The pulse of Jace's device the previous evening had unsettled them, and humans were unpredictable. They had no patterns that could be anticipated. Jace knelt behind a rock and observed. He didn't move unless he needed to. Every twitch, every shimmer of alien energy, every slight movement was catalogued in his mind. He noticed a pattern. The figures rotated in short bursts, occasionally hovering near the cliff edge and then retreating. Mara realized that they were patrolling, not guarding. They believed their strength alone ensured success. "Watch how they rotate," Jace finally said softly, pointing. "See the gaps," Mara nodded. The spaces between the patrols were small, but enough. Enough for a human mind to exploit. By midday, Jace had set the drone into motion. It hovered at a distance, flashing faint lights, creating shadows that mimicked a moving human. The alien figures paused, reacting instantly to the illusion. For a few tense minutes, they ignored Mara's approach. "Move now," Jace whispered. Mara crept forward, keeping low in the tall grass. Every step was measured, every movement precise. Her pulse raced, but she forced herself to remain silent, trusting Jace's strategy. The drone flickered and zipped unpredictably, forcing the shadowed beings to split their attention. Mara felt a thrill of hope. Humans were clever, unpredictable, adaptable. That was their strength. Hours passed. Mara and Jace moved through hidden paths, carefully reading the land. He used small signals, taps, nods, even the tilt of his hat, to communicate with her. Mara realized that sometimes no words were needed. Action, observation, and trust were stronger than speech. As they approached a narrow canyon ridge, they discovered something unexpected. The alien craft emitted a faint energy field that reacted to movement, almost like it sensed intention. A misstep could alert the beings instantly, but Jace was prepared. He carefully adjusted the drone's lights and signals, creating a pattern that mimicked two humans approaching from one direction, while he and Mara crept along another. It worked. The shadowed figures hesitated, unsure which humans to follow. The energy field shimmered and flickered, confused by the small tricks. Mara held her breath as she peeked over the ridge. Eli floated near the edge, still unconscious but unharmed. The aliens hadn't noticed them yet. Jace signaled with a small flick of his hand. Mara understood immediately. This was their chance to move closer. Every muscle in her body tensed as she took slow, careful steps. She felt the soft rocks beneath her feet, the dry grass brushing her legs, the sun on her back. She had never been more aware of her surroundings. Every detail mattered, every second counted. They reached a ledge just behind the alien figures. Mara froze, heart racing, but Jace motioned for her to stay still. He whispered, though she couldn't hear the words, "Wait." Minutes passed. The alien beings rotated, confused by the drone. One of them extended its hand toward Eli again, but the human ingenuity of Jace's plan was already in motion. He adjusted the drone, making it move rapidly toward a cliff edge, drawing the attention of the beings. "Now," he finally whispered. Mara moved quickly, carefully, lifting Eli from the floating energy field with her own hands. The boy stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's okay, Eli," Mara said softly, holding him close. "I'm here. I've got you." Jace used the distraction to disable a small energy emitter on the alien craft, something that Mara hadn't even noticed until now. With a soft hum, the field around Eli weakened, allowing them to retreat. The aliens reacted instantly, but their movement was delayed, confused by the clever use of the drone and terrain. Mara ran, holding Eli tightly, following Jace's lead. Every step, every leap was calculated, and the aliens couldn't keep up. Humans didn't rely solely on speed. They relied on creativity, intuition, and courage. By the time they reached the safe plains, the shadowed figures had retreated back toward their craft, frustrated and bewildered. Eli clung to his mother, exhausted but safe. Mara looked at Jace, gratitude and awe shining in her eyes. You saved him," she whispered. Jace nodded once, silent as always. No words were needed. The child was safe, and that was enough. As they walked back to the ranch, Mara held Eli close and Jace scanned the horizon. There was a lesson in his calm observation, a reminder that humans were not just fragile beings in the vastness of the universe. They were clever, adaptable, and capable of overcoming even the most advanced adversaries. The sun began to rise again, painting the plains in gold and orange. The alien craft disappeared into the distance, but Mara knew this was only the beginning. Humans had something the aliens could not measure: unpredictability, ingenuity, and heart. And with that, they could face anything. Jace returned to the farmhouse, placing the drone carefully on the table. Mara looked at him, tears of relief streaming down her face. How do you always know what to do?" He simply tipped his hat slightly and returned to the porch. He didn't speak, but Mara understood. Humans didn't always need words. Sometimes the mind, the courage, and the heart were enough. The plains were quiet again, but Mara knew the truth. Out there in the vast universe, humans were not weak. They were clever, resourceful, and dangerous in ways the stars themselves had not yet learned to fear. And as long as people like Jace and Mara were willing to act, no threat, alien or otherwise, could take away what truly mattered. Eli nestled against his mother, finally calm. And Mara knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the first step of their story. One where humans would continue to shine, not through weapons or technology, but through ingenuity, courage, and the unbreakable bond between them. The wind swept across the plains, carrying the scent of hope. And in the silence, Jace's calm presence reminded them all. Humans were unpredictable, unstoppable, and very much alive. The morning air was crisp and clear, carrying the scent of dry grass and distant flowers across Narration Ranch. The twin suns had just risen, painting the horizon with streaks of gold and pink. Mara sat on the porch, Eli in her lap, while the boy nibbled on a piece of bread she had packed for him. He was quiet now, still shaken but safe. Yet Mara knew this was only the beginning. The shadowed beings that had taken him weren't gone. They were out there, somewhere beyond the canyon, observing, learning, perhaps planning their next move. Jace stood at the edge of the field, hat low over his eyes, scanning the distant hills. His quiet presence was reassuring, even when the fear in Mara's chest threatened to overwhelm her. He didn't speak, but Mara could see his mind already working, already calculating. "Do you think they'll come back?" Mara asked, her voice trembling slightly. Jace didn't answer. Instead, he bent down and examined the soil near a fence post, tracing subtle patterns in the dirt with his fingers. Mara understood this as well. Observation was the first step to understanding. Humans survived by noticing details others missed, by reading the world around them, by seeing patterns where others saw only chaos. Hours passed. The ranch remained quiet. Then, as the suns climbed higher, a small shimmer appeared on the horizon. It moved slowly, deliberately, like a reflection on water, but this shimmer wasn't natural. Mara's heart clenched. "They're back," she whispered. Jace didn't flinch. He gestured silently for her to stay behind a low rock as the shimmer drew closer. The shadowed figures emerged, hovering lightly above the ground, but this time their movement was different. There was hesitation in the way they approached, a caution Mara hadn't seen before. Then something unexpected happened. One of the figures slowed and tilted its head, as if observing them differently. Its glow pulsed faintly, not in a threatening way, but almost curiously. Jace noticed it immediately. He crouched behind the rock, moving slowly so as not to provoke them. Then, with a steady hand, he activated a small device he had kept in his pocket, a tiny holographic projector that displayed a simple sequence of light patterns. It wasn't flashy, but it caught the figure's attention. The being paused. Its glow pulsed in response as though it were trying to communicate. Mara's eyes widened. Communication? Could that be possible? Jace gestured for her to stay calm. Then slowly he moved forward, hands open, showing no threat. He spoke softly, but only in short, simple phrases, careful to avoid sudden movements. The alien figure mirrored him in its own way, hovering slightly closer, tilting its body in response to his gestures. Mara watched, astonished. Her son's captors, beings that had seemed so alien, so unstoppable, were now curious. Over the next hour, a delicate exchange unfolded. Jace used the projector, simple gestures and subtle movements to establish a basic form of understanding. The figure responded in kind, pulsing its glow in patterns that Jace seemed to interpret almost instinctively. Mara realized what was happening. This wasn't about force or weapons. This was about empathy, observation, and intelligence, the very traits that made humans remarkable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the alien figure hovered back slightly, then gestured toward Eli. Mara's heart leapt. The being wasn't threatening. They were considering, evaluating, perhaps even negotiating. Jace crouched slightly and nodded toward Mara, signaling that it was safe to approach. She stepped forward, holding Eli close. The boy clung to her, but he was safe. The shadowed figure extended a small appendage, almost like a hand, and emitted a soft light. Jace didn't hesitate. He mimicked the gesture carefully, matching the rhythm and intensity of the glow. The figure pulsed again, this time in what Mara could only interpret as approval. For the first time, Mara felt something she hadn't dared to hope for, a connection. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they could also create understanding, even with beings who had seemed impossible to reach. Then another figure appeared, hovering behind the first. It seemed more cautious, its glow flickering as it watched. Jace didn't panic. Instead, he shifted slightly, using the projector to create a pattern of light that reassured the second being. Slowly, cautiously, it joined the exchange. Mara's mind raced. This was more than rescue. This was a breakthrough. Humans had faced creatures with advanced technology, and yet here they were, finding a way to communicate, not with weapons but with patience, observation, and creativity. Hours passed as the exchange continued. Jace's mind worked at a pace Mara could barely follow. He understood timing, rhythm, and intention. He noticed how the aliens reacted to subtle movements, how their energy pulsed in response to thought and gesture. Mara watched in awe as he navigated this delicate dance with precision. Finally, the first figure emitted a steady pulse, a signal that in Jace's understanding meant acknowledgement. Then, it hovered closer to Eli, as if to ensure the child's safety. Mara felt tears well up in her eyes. Her son was safe, and the beings had shown something unexpected, a capacity to understand. Jace gave a small nod toward Mara, signaling that it was safe to relax. "We've made contact," she whispered, almost in disbelief. The aliens remained nearby, watching. They didn't retreat, but they didn't advance either. It was as if they were considering humans in a new light, no longer just unpredictable obstacles, but creatures capable of thought, creativity, and negotiation. Mara realized something crucial. Humans didn't need to fight to be powerful. Their ingenuity, patience, and courage, qualities the aliens hadn't expected, were enough to establish respect, even if it was cautious and silent. By late afternoon, Jace and Mara had learned something incredible. The shadowed beings were not purely hostile. They were explorers, collectors of knowledge, and observers of life. They took Eli not to harm him, but out of curiosity, to study the human spirit and its capabilities. It was a revelation that changed everything. Humans weren't weak, fragile, or insignificant. They were resilient, clever, and capable of forming connections even across the vast gulf of species and experience. Jace used this insight to plan their next move. He didn't just want Eli safe. He wanted to teach the aliens something important. Humans were not to be underestimated. They could think, adapt, and innovate in ways that even advanced technology could not predict. Mara watched as he worked, silent but focused. He sketched small diagrams in the dirt, showing pathways, energy fields, and patterns. She realized that he wasn't just rescuing her son. He was preparing a future where humans could interact with these beings as equals, using their minds and hearts as weapons and tools, rather than guns or machines. As the twin suns dipped toward the horizon again, the shadowed figures hovered a short distance away. Their glow pulsed softly, in a pattern that Mara now understood as attention. Jace crouched beside her and pointed subtly toward the canyon. He had a plan to return them home safely, and perhaps to show the aliens that humans could be allies, not threats. The journey back would not be easy. The aliens were powerful, and their curiosity could turn to caution or suspicion at any moment. But Mara felt a deep sense of confidence. With Jace's mind and human ingenuity on their side, they had a chance, not just for safety but for understanding. Night fell slowly over the plains. The stars appeared one by one, glittering like diamonds over the quiet ranch. Mara held Eli close, whispering soothing words. Jace sat nearby, scanning the horizon, already thinking 3 steps ahead. For the first time, Mara understood something profound. Humans were not defined by their strength alone. They were defined by their creativity, their courage, and their willingness to act wisely when the stakes were highest. And in the face of an unknown, intelligent, and advanced species that was more powerful than anything else, Eli stirred in her arms, looking up at the stars. "Mama, the shiny people, they're not bad," Mara smiled gently. "No, my love, they're curious, and we're teaching them that humans are strong in ways they don't yet understand." Jace observed silently. Humans had survived for millennia, not because of brute force, but because they adapted, learned, and worked together. And now, even on this distant planet, their ingenuity had created something remarkable: the possibility of peace, or at least understanding, with beings far more advanced than themselves. As the night deepened, Mara felt a warmth in her chest. Humanity's future wasn't written in weapons or conquest. It was written in intelligence, courage, and heart. And with minds like Jace's guiding them, humans could face anything. The twin moons glimmered over the plains. The shadowed figures lingered, observing but no longer threatening. And Mara knew, with a certainty she had never felt before, that humans, clever, creative, and unbreakable, had just taken the first step in a journey that would change everything. The sun rose slowly over Narration Ranch, painting the plains with soft shades of gold. The air was calm, carrying the faint scent of dry grass and wildflowers. But Mara knew that calm could not last. The shadowed beings had not left. They were still near the canyon, their glowing forms hovering and pulsing in patterns that Mara and Jace had begun to understand. Eli, now awake and alert, clung to Mara as she prepared for the day. Her heart beat fast, but her determination had grown stronger. With Jace by her side, she felt a sense of hope she hadn't dared to feel the day before. Humans were clever, unpredictable, and patient. And that could make all the difference. Jace stood at the edge of the field, surveying the distant canyon. He didn't speak, but Mara had learned that words weren't needed. His gaze was steady, calculating. Every movement, every shadow, every ripple of energy from the aliens was being noted. He had a plan, and Mara trusted it completely. The first step was observation. Jace knelt near the edge of the barn and examined the soil, rocks, and paths leading to the canyon. Every step matters, he seemed to say with his gestures. He noticed that the aliens followed a pattern, rotating and pulsing in a specific rhythm. Their attention shifted when their energy fields detected movement, but small distractions could confuse them. Mara realized that their greatest strength was also their weakness, predictability. By late morning, Jace had assembled several small drones from spare parts scattered around the ranch. They weren't large or flashy, but each had a specific purpose. Some would emit faint lights to distract, others would hover and create shadows, and one would mimic movement along a distant ridge. Mara watched, fascinated as he calibrated them with meticulous precision. "This will work," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Jace gave a small nod. Silence was their agreement. As the twin suns reached their zenith, Jace and Mara set out toward the canyon. Eli clung to Mara, wide-eyed but calm. The path was rough, filled with jagged rocks, dry brush, and the occasional small creek. Every step had to be measured. Mara remembered Jace's lessons. Patience, observation, and creativity were more powerful than speed or force. They reached a high ridge overlooking the canyon. From this vantage point, Mara could see the shadowed figures and the faint glow of their energy fields. Eli squirmed slightly, but Mara held him tightly. "Stay calm," she whispered. He nodded, trusting her. Jace signaled for the drones to begin. One by one, they lifted off, hovering silently in the air. They flickered lights, moved in patterns, and created small distractions that drew the aliens' attention away from the ridge where Mara and Eli crouched. The shadowed beings tilted their heads, their pulsing glow flickering in confusion. Humans were not meant to be predictable, and the aliens were realizing this now. "Move," Jace signaled with a small hand gesture. Mara stepped carefully, keeping Eli close. They descended slowly along a hidden path, using rocks and natural cover to stay out of sight. Each step was precise. Each movement was calculated. Halfway down, Mara noticed one of the aliens adjusting its position, preparing to check the ridge. Her heart raced. She froze. Jace tapped the drone's control, and it zipped across the canyon, creating a flash of light that drew the alien's attention. Mara exhaled slowly. Humans could turn small advantages into opportunities. They reached the canyon floor, hidden behind a cluster of large rocks. From here they could see Eli, still floating gently above the energy field that had once held him. He was calm now, but unconscious to the potential dangers around him. Mara's heart ached to see him so small, so vulnerable, but hope surged through her. Jay stepped forward, motioning for Mara to stay back. Using a combination of hand gestures, small devices, and careful movements, he approached the alien figures. The first one pulsed softly in recognition, responding to his attempts at communication. Mara watched in awe as he extended a small, glowing tool, carefully mimicking the rhythm of the alien's energy pulses. The alien pulsed in response, and Jace moved closer to Eli. The second figure hovered nearby, curious but cautious. Jace adjusted the device slightly, creating a subtle pattern that reassured it. Humans didn't rely on force. They relied on intelligence, intuition, and understanding. The aliens were learning this now. Mara inched forward, keeping Eli safe in her arms. Every step was careful, every movement deliberate. She felt the energy from the field, the faint hum of alien power, but Jace's presence gave her confidence. They were not alone, and humans had a unique ability, the ability to adapt. Jace reached Eli and gently placed a hand near the child. The energy field flickered but did not resist. Mara exhaled in relief. The aliens were not fighting. They were observing, processing, learning. And humans had found a way to turn observation into advantage. With careful coordination, Jace and Mara moved Eli away from the energy field. The drones continued their distraction, flickering lights and creating shadows that kept the aliens occupied. One figure moved closer, sensing the change, but Jace quickly adjusted a signal and it paused, uncertain. Finally, they were close to the canyon exit. Mara's legs ached and Eli stirred, sensing safety. Jace motioned for them to move quickly but carefully. They stepped over rocks, through shallow streams and across dry grass, keeping low and avoiding detection. The aliens began to react, realizing the humans were escaping. But by now, Jace had anticipated their response. The drones shifted position, creating false trails and shadows that confused the shadowed figures. Humans could think faster than predictable patterns. Creativity and strategy were their greatest weapons. As they reached the outer plains, Mara felt a surge of triumph. Eli was safe. The aliens were still watching, still curious, but they had not harmed anyone. Mara realized that humans didn't need to dominate with strength. They could win with cleverness, courage, and heart. They reached the farmhouse just as the suns began to set. The plains glowed with a warm orange light and Mara set Eli down on the porch. He looked up at her, wide-eyed but safe. You saved me, Mama," he whispered. Mara hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "No, Eli, we saved each other." And Jace, he showed us how humans can face anything, just by thinking, planning, and staying calm. Jace stood quietly nearby, his hat low over his eyes. He didn't speak, but Mara could see his satisfaction. Humans had outsmarted beings far more advanced than themselves, not through force but through ingenuity. Night fell, and the twin moons rose over the plains. The shadowed figures lingered in the distance, observing but no longer threatening. Mara understood what this meant. Humans had made a mark. Even creatures from beyond the stars recognized that humans were clever, patient, and unpredictable. That night, Mara sat with Eli on the porch, telling him stories of human ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Jace remained at the edge of the field, silent but vigilant, reminding them that survival depended not only on strength but also on observation and intelligence. For the first time, Mara felt a profound truth settle in her heart. Humans were not weak. They could adapt, innovate, and outthink even the most advanced adversaries. And with courage and patience, they could face challenges no one else could. As the wind swept across the plains, carrying the scent of grass and distant flowers, Mara knew that this was not just a victory for them. It was a testament to all humans. Intelligence, creativity, and heart were their greatest tools. And with them, they could survive, thrive, and even inspire those from beyond the stars. Jace tipped his hat to Mara and Eli before returning to the shadows of the plains. They didn't need words. The lesson had been learned. Humans were not only survivors, they were innovators, thinkers, and a force the universe could not underestimate. And somewhere in the distance, the shadowed figures pulsed faintly, as if acknowledging this truth. The rescue was complete. Eli was safe. The aliens had learned something unexpected. And Mara understood the most important lesson of all. Humans could face the unknown not through power alone, but through mind, heart, and courage. The morning sun rose gently over Narian Ranch, spreading soft light across the plains. Eli sat on the porch, swinging his small legs, while Mara prepared breakfast inside. The twin moons had disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the sky clear and golden. For the first time in days, the ranch felt calm. But calm did not mean forgetfulness. Mara knew the shadowed beings were still out there, somewhere beyond the canyon. And Jace, the silent rancher who had saved her son, remained vigilant. He stood at the edge of the fields, hat low over his eyes, scanning the horizon as if nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Eli tugged at Mara's sleeve. "Mama, are they gone?" "They're far away now, Eli," Mara said softly, brushing his hair back. "But we need to be careful. Remember what Jace taught us. Humans have to watch, think, and act. That's how we stay safe." Eli nodded, his small face serious. He had learned more in the past few days than most children his age. The boy understood the power of observation, patience, and creativity, the traits that had saved him. Jace walked over slowly, silent as ever. He didn't speak, but his presence carried reassurance. Mara watched him, remembering how quiet he had been when Eli was first taken, and how calm, clever, and determined he had remained throughout. Humans had survived not just because of strength, but because of ingenuity, heart, and courage. And Jace had shown that perfectly. The three of them spent the morning tending to the ranch. Mara fed the animals, Eli helped where he could, and Jace inspected the fences and gates. Even in everyday tasks, Mara noticed his skill, every movement precise, every observation deliberate. The same patience and intelligence that had guided the rescue now shaped the ranch itself. As they worked, a shimmer appeared on the horizon. Mara froze for a moment, heart pounding, but Jace did not flinch. He simply observed, analyzing the movement, reading patterns in the air, and waiting. The shadowed beings emerged again, not in a threatening way but cautiously, hovering at the edge of the plains. Mara could see their glow, pulsing faintly, and she realized something remarkable. They were studying humans, not as enemies, but as beings worth understanding. Jace nodded once to Mara, and she understood. Humans had left an impression. Their cleverness, patience, and courage had shown the aliens that humans were not to be underestimated. And now, the beings were curious, learning, and perhaps even reconsidering their assumptions about humans. Over the next few days, a delicate routine formed. The shadowed figures remained near the canyon, watching from a distance, but they did not interfere with life on the ranch. Jace continued his silent vigilance, teaching Mara and Eli the subtle lessons of observation, strategy, and adaptation. Eli learned to notice small patterns, the way the wind shifted over the plains, the movement of animals, and even the faint pulse of alien energy in the distance. He learned that humans could solve problems not through force, but through thinking, creativity, and courage. One afternoon, Mara noticed the aliens behaving differently. One figure hovered closer than before, pulsating its glow in what seemed like deliberate curiosity. Jace observed carefully, then gestured toward Mara and Eli. He encouraged them silently to approach slowly. With careful steps, Mara walked forward, Eli by her side. The alien figure pulsed again, this time brighter, responding to their presence. Mara realized they were trying to communicate, not with words but with understanding. Humans had shown them something new: empathy, creativity, and courage. Jace stayed nearby, ready to intervene if needed, but nothing aggressive happened. The alien figure hovered closer to Eli, almost as if acknowledging him, then shifted its gaze toward Mara. Mara felt a strange sense of connection. Humans and these beings could understand each other, even across the vast differences of species and technology. This small exchange marked a turning point. The aliens were no longer just observers, they were learners. Humans had proven that cleverness, patience, and heart could earn respect even from beings far more advanced. As the days passed, Mara and Jace worked on the ranch while keeping a careful eye on the shadows beyond the canyon. They noticed the aliens exploring the landscape in small, deliberate patterns, learning from the humans' behavior. Mara realized something important. Humans had not only survived, they had taught. Humans could shape understanding through intelligence, creativity, and courage. That was a power unlike any weapon, unlike any machine, and it was uniquely human. One evening, as the twin suns set and the plains glowed orange, Jace led Mara and Eli to a high ridge overlooking the canyon. From here, the alien figures were visible, hovering silently but no longer threatening. Jace gestured toward them, then toward Mara and Eli. He wanted them to see what their actions had accomplished. Mara understood. Humans had left a mark, not through violence but through ingenuity and heart. The aliens had learned that humans were clever, adaptable, and resilient. Even in a galaxy filled with advanced technology, humans could create understanding, connection, and respect. Eli watched the scene in awe. "Mama, we helped them understand us." Mara smiled and nodded. "Yes, Eli, humans can face anything, not by being the strongest but by being clever, brave, and understanding. That's how we survive, and that's how we teach others too." Jay stayed silent, but his posture spoke volumes. He had shown them the way. Humans didn't need to fight to be powerful. Their creativity, patience, and courage made them remarkable. Over the next few weeks, life returned to a peaceful rhythm. The aliens stayed near the canyon, observing but not interfering. Mara, Eli, and Jace continued their daily routines, quietly building the ranch and living in harmony with the land and the creatures around them. Mara often reflected on what had happened. The rescue, the lessons, the unexpected alliance, it all proved one thing: humans were not weak. They could adapt, innovate, and influence even beings from beyond the stars. Every small action, every observation, every thoughtful choice had an impact. Humans were powerful not because of force, but because of mind, heart, and courage. One evening, Mara watched the twin moons rise, their soft glow reflecting on the plains. Eli slept peacefully beside her, exhausted but safe. Jay stood silently at the edge of the field, his hat casting a shadow over his face, watching the horizon. Mara understood that humans had changed the future that day. The aliens had learned something unexpected. Humans were clever, resourceful, and unpredictable. They could survive, thrive, and even teach those who had once seemed so far beyond their reach. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and pride. Humans had survived against the odds, not through violence or weapons, but through intelligence, courage, and heart. And with people like Jace leading by example, humanity could face any challenge the universe placed before them. The wind swept across the plains, carrying the scent of grass and flowers, and with it, a sense of hope. Mara, Eli, and Jace stood together, united by experience, learning, and the unshakable bond that humans shared with each other, and now, with the beings beyond the stars. It was clear: the rescue had been only the beginning. Humans had proven themselves capable of understanding, teaching, and adapting in ways that no one, not even advanced aliens, could fully anticipate. And that truth would carry them forward, across the plains, across the stars, and into the future. The sun set completely, leaving the ranch bathed in twilight. Mara hugged Eli, feeling the steady warmth of life and the quiet strength of the human spirit. Jay stood nearby, ever vigilant, ever silent, a reminder of what humans could achieve with courage, patience, and intelligence. And somewhere beyond the canyon, the aliens pulsed softly, observing and learning. They had come to take a child, but they had learned something far greater: that humans, no matter how small or quiet, could shape understanding, command respect, and inspire even the most advanced beings. The stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, and Mara felt a profound sense of certainty. Humans were not only survivors, they were innovators, thinkers, and teachers. and with courage, patience, and heart, they could face anything. The plains of Narration Ranch were quiet again. Life resumed its rhythm, but the universe had changed. Humans had made a mark, not through force but through ingenuity, understanding, and the enduring power of their spirit. Mara watched the horizon one last time that night. She knew the shadowed figures would always remember what they had seen, that humans were clever, brave, and unstoppable in ways that no technology could predict. And she smiled, knowing that humanity's story was just beginning, and that the stars themselves had taken notice.